Hello, welcome back to my channel. As you can see from the title of this video, I am going to be doing a very exciting video today. I am going to be recommending you guys books based off of some of my favorite and also very popular Taylor Swift songs from every single one of her albums, besides the Christmas album, but all 12 of her albums regardless. I did want to mention that I got some inspo from Miss Destiny Sidwell. She is starting a series of recommending books from each album, and so far she has done a video recommending books from the debut, Taylor Swift's first album, and so I did just want to say definitely go watch her video. I also have done a lot of recommending books based off of Taylor Swift's albums on my TikTok a long time ago, so I've kind of like clashed those two ideas together. I'm going to be recommending you guys a bunch of books based off of Taylor Swift songs. I'll be doing all the albums like how I said, so I've got quite a bit of books here, so let's get into it. First up, we have got Debut, what we refer to as Debut, but it is titled Taylor Swift. It is her first album she has ever released. I personally love Debut so much. I love country Taylor. I'm so excited for her to release Debut, Taylor's version, and to hear her mature voice on these songs that she wrote when she was literally just a teenager. This album has one of my favorite songs of all time on it by her, which is Tim McGraw. And the book that I chose for this song is Just One Day by Gail Forman. The song Tim McGraw is about a girl who is reminiscing on a relationship that's just recently ended and talking about all the things that she hopes reminds her ex or this guy of her. And in this book, it is about a girl who goes on a European tour right after she graduates high school. She meets a guy on her last day there, and she really wanted to go to Paris while she was there, but it wasn't a part of the program. He says, I'll show you Paris for your last day here. And so the first half of the book is them going to Paris and sightseeing and end up kind of falling in love. And then the second half is her coming back to America, starting college, dealing with some deeper topics like depression and mental health, and also reminiscing on this amazing, like, surreal day that she spent with someone that she really feels like she loves. And so I think that instead of the lyrics, when you think Tim McGraw, I hope you think of me, it's kind of like when you think of Paris, I hope you think of me. The next song that I chose is one that I think is personally really underrated on this album. I don't think that many people talk about this song enough. It is Mary's Song from the debut album. This song is about two kids who grew up together, and the narrator of the song talking about how what their love could be like if they go for it, what their life could be like if, you know, they confess their love to one another. And so it made me think of just a really sweet childhood friends to lovers kind of story, and I chose Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter for this. This is about a girl named Liz, and she has been neighbors to this guy named Wes for a very long time. They were kind of friends when they were younger, but as Wes got older, he started to play pranks on her and stuff, so they kind of became enemies in a sense as they got older, and he is actually friends with someone that she has a crush on. He starts to conspire with Wes on how to figure out to get this boy's attention, but end up they kind of start their own little love story, and that's what the whole book is about. It is just a super cute, lighthearted, childhood friends to lovers story, and I thought that this one correlated really well with the song Mary's Song. Now we are jumping into the album Fearless. I think before Tortured Poets Department came out, Fearless was my favorite album. It is so hard to choose a favorite album. I'm sure you guys can relate, especially a favorite song, but I think based on the amount of songs that I absolutely love, I have so many favorites from Fearless. So one of the songs that I chose is Untouchable. Untouchable is about a girl looking out her window, looking at the sky, dreaming about this man that she is in love with. And when I was reading this book, 1,000 Heartbeats by Kiera Cass, this is a YA romantasy fantasy book. It is about a girl who is the daughter of a king to one kingdom, and then there's another character named Lennox who is a soldier, and he is trying to get the kingdom back from her father's hands. So obviously their love would be forbidden if it was a thing, right? Well, it is. They end up meeting each other. Sparks fly, starstruck, everything. And there's a lot of moments in this book where she's looking out her window and looking up to the sky and thinking of him. So the lyrics that I think correlate best to this is, in the middle of the night when I'm in this dream, it's like a million little stars spelling out your name. And I just think that that lyric encapsulates their story so much. I loved this book so much. It is my favorite YA romance of all time, so if you haven't read this yet, definitely do. Next up, we have got the classic Taylor Swift song, You Belong With Me. It is also on the Fearless album. I think that when anybody thinks of Taylor Swift, one of the songs that comes to mind is You Belong With Me. It is one of her most fun, best, also like highly praised songs that she has ever come out with, and so I wanted to choose that song. And the book that I'm correlating to it is Same Time Next Year by Annabelle Monaghan. The way that I was thinking about how this book correlates with the song is, instead of it being from the perspective of a girl, it is from the perspective of a guy. This book is about a girl named Sam, and she grew up going to her family's beach house every year for the summer, and she ends up falling in love with the guy that stays at the beach house right next door to hers. And now we are flash forward into modern day. They have been broken up for quite a long time. Some major family things went down that caused them to kind of split and like head separate ways, but she has never fully gotten over it, but she has moved on. She brings her fiance with her to the beach house this summer, and when she gets there, Wyatt, the guy who she fell in love with all those summers ago, is there. And so I was kind of thinking about the song You Belong With Me being from his perspective, because he sees her with this fiance that he doesn't really think, and the family doesn't really think, is like her perfect match. He's just like, can't you see, like, you belong with me? I know you so well. So this one is what I chose for You Belong With Me. Now we have gotten to Taylor Swift's third album, Speak Now. This is, I'm probably going to say this for every single album, but this truly is one of my favorite albums. It is in my top 5, if not top 3, maybe. It has one of my favorite songs of all time by her. I think it actually would be my favorite, but I will save that one for last. The first song that I want to talk about is Last Kiss. I think that Last Kiss is one of her most heartbreaking songs that she's ever written. Even though she's wrote a lot of heartbreaking songs, I think that this one is definitely high up there for heartbreaking songs, sad songs that she has ever wrote. And so the book that I'm correlating to the song Last Kiss is Swear on This Life by Renee Carlino. I am a huge fan of Renee Carlino's work. I have read almost every single book that she has ever put out. This is about a girl who is a literary agent, and her roommate comes to her one day and she's like, hey, I just read this book. It is amazing. I think that you should read it. It would just do so much good for you, so much healing for you. And she's like, okay, like, why? Guess I'll give it a chance. But her roommate did that knowing that the author of this book was actually her first love when she was a teenager. And her life when she was a teenager was very rough. She did not grow up in the best household ever, but she did have a very sweet love story when she was younger, but her and him went separate ways. She never really got closure for it, and so when she starts to read this book, she figures out, oh my god, like, this is my first love, and this book is about my childhood and our love story. Part of the song Last Kiss that I'm kind of correlating to this is the lyrics, so I'll watch your life in pictures like I used to watch you sleep. Instead of pictures, it's kind of like her trying to find him and following him to all these like authors events and stuff like that in hopes that she will get to meet him again. And that's all I'm gonna really say there, but it does have a lot of heartbreak in it at the beginning, like how Last Kiss does, and I just think if you've read this, you'll kind of understand the correlation more, but I think that this book kind of hits the nail on the head for Last Kiss. Now, for my all-time favorite song by Miss Taylor, it is Timeless. It was released from the vault for Speak Now Taylor's version, and I am such a hopeless romantic. I really believe that love lasts longer than a lifetime, and that is what the song Timeless is kind of all about. True love can't be measured. It will be there if it is real, like honest, pure love. And so when I find books that kind of like resonate with that moral, oh my god, I lose it. And they're automatically 5 stars. They are my favorite things ever. They like make me feel so seen and just make my heart feel so full. So with that being said, I have 2 recommendations for this song. The first one being The 100 Loves of Juliet by Evelyn Skye. I have talked about this book on every single platform I have an account on. This is a contemporary romance. It is about a girl named Helene who just recently got divorced, and she moves to Alaska to have some solitary time so she can finish her memoir that she's working on. She goes to a pub one night and stumbles into this guy named Sebastian. Now when she sees him and kind of like stumbles into him, she's like, I feel like I've met you before. I feel like you have had some kind of importance in my life. It's this very weird, surreal, deja vu feeling that she has. And then we flip to Sebastian's perspective, and he tells us that, crazy enough, he is Romeo from the original Romeo and Juliet story, but he never died. Juliet did die, but he never did, and his curse for what happened in Romeo and Juliet is that he will meet reincarnated Juliets, not looking like the original Juliet or even with the name Juliet. If she falls in love with him, she will die. So over the decades since the original Romeo and Juliet story, and we're now in modern day, he has met many Juliets, and they have all passed away. Whether it's within a month of them falling in love or a few years, he has felt the reoccurring heartbreak over and over again, and he is fed up. He's like, I'm not doing this again. So when he stumbles into Helene, he is so mean and so rude because he knows that that's his Juliet. And he's like, I don't want her to die. I don't want to put myself through that heartbreak again. But soulmates just cannot stay away from one another. So that's all I'm really going to say about this one. This book really does prove that love lasts longer than a lifetime, and that is what I absolutely loved about it. The second book that I want to correlate to Timeless is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This book is raved about on all the platforms, the whole book universe. I would be surprised if you haven't read it, but if you haven't, it is about a girl who has an amazing connection with her aunt. She has traveled the world with her aunt for many years of her life, and her aunt passes away. And so when she does, main character Clementine inherits her aunt's apartment. When Clementine was younger, her aunt told her this story that this apartment is magical. There was one day when her aunt, a long time ago, walked into the threshold of her apartment that she owned, and she sent back in time 7 years before for whoever was living at that apartment at the time. And her aunt ended up falling in love with that person. And so she said, there are 2 rules in this house, in this apartment. Take your shoes off when you come in, and do not fall in love in this apartment. Now, fast forward to real time. When Clementine walks into the threshold of her aunt's apartment that is now hers, she is met with a guy in her living room. And she immediately realizes, oh my god, it's happened to me. I've been sent back 7 years in time. And in this particular time, there's a guy named Ewan, I don't really know how to pronounce his name, but one of those 2, and he is staying at her aunt's apartment for the summer, while 7 years ago, her and her aunt are backpacking across Europe. So when she walks in, she knows, like, I've been pushed back into time, but he is living in his current time, if that kind of makes sense. It sounds a little complicated the way I'm explaining it. I'm terrible at explaining books, but it doesn't seem as complicated when you're reading it. I didn't have a hard time grasping on to like what the current time frame was, kind of a thing. The author wrote it in a very well way. This one also just does prove that in whatever lifetime it may be, you will always find the person you're meant to be with, and so you gotta read it if you haven't. Now we are hopping into Taylor's 4th album, Red. This album has a lot of heartbreaking songs on it, and I was trying to steer away from those to give you guys recommendations, even though a lot of those heartbreaking songs are some of my favorites. But one that is not heartbreaking at all and is such a fun song that I also don't hear that many people talking about is Starlight. It is one of my favorite songs on the Red album, and so the book that I wanted to correlate to Starlight is is Bellegarde by Jamie Lilac. This is a fun, pretty YA romance book about a girl who is kind of lower class in Paris, and she goes to a school with a bunch of people that have a lot of money, and also a very important, like, heir to the throne prince kind of guy is at her school. Now every year they have this ball called the Bellegarde Ball, and people get nominated for it, kind of like homecoming queen, and she's very looked over at her school. Him and his friends make a bet that he can get her to win the Bellegarde Bloom of the Year, then he will win a bunch of money, kind of a thing. So he starts to befriend her. She's like, what the heck, you've never talked to me before. But then she kind of starts to like him, he kind of starts to like her, but he's got this weight on his shoulders knowing that this wasn't a natural interaction, it wasn't a natural connection, and time is ticking before she finds out of what started this whole interaction. Now that is a, you know, factor into it, is that it kind of sucks that he did that, but regardless, it is such a fun ballroom, like pretty dresses, Persian sweets and bakeries and stuff, and like she's also really wants to be a dressmaker for the royal family when she's older. So there's a lot of fashion talk in this. I just really enjoyed it, and the part of Starlight where it's like, oh my, what a wondrous tune, we had the best night, we won't forget how we moved, the whole place was dressed to the nines and we were dancing like we're made of starlight. I just really thought that this correlated really well with it. The next song that I chose is Nothing New by Miss Taylor. This also has Phoebe Bridgers on it. And now the song Nothing New holds a very special place in my heart. I think it is a song that focuses a lot on reflection and fear of what the world is going to feel about you once you lose that youthfulness that you have before you're kind of in your early 20s. And so two books that made me think of this song is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. This is a memoir, and Dolly talks about everything that she learned from her 20s to her 30s, whether it's about love or friendships or losing friendships, ending relationships, work life, family, everything like that. This book is just based on a lot of reflection and has a lot of good insight on it that I think if you're in your 20s you should read. And then this book, Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. This is fiction. It's not a memoir, it's literary fiction. It's about a girl who's in her 40s, and the book starts out where you're finding out she's getting a divorce, and then it flashes back to when kind of in her late teens, early 20s, and her whole journey leading up to what you were told about at the beginning of the story. It talks about mental health, it talks about growing up. It also has a lot of valuable lessons and insight that I heavily tabbed. It's one of my favorite literary fictions of all time. So I think that if, you know, you're in a bit of a whirlwind mind and are just kind of like stuck and scared of what your next move is going to be, and you feel like you're getting old and you're losing that youthful light to yourself, these are really good books to read and just kind of have the time to reflect and realize that even though that number that you are turning when you get older, it is a number, but it doesn't signify what's in your heart and what's in your mind, and I think that's a very important thing to realize. Next up is 1989. This album has a lot of fun summery songs to me. When I think of like the summery albums of Taylor Swift, it's definitely Lover and 1989. One of my favorite songs on 1989 is This Love, and whenever I listen to that song, I think about a second chance summer romance, and one of the best second chance summer romances of all time is Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is all about kind of giving a second chance to someone you were once in love with before, but while both or one of them has maybe fallen out of love during that time. The lyrics, this love had to let it go free, this love came back to me, just really encapsulates the whole storyline of this book. The next song that I chose is Wildest Dreams from 1989. This song kind of makes me feel, it kind of reminds me of I Can See You from the Speak Now vault tracks, but a little bit less sultry. It's more like light and fluffy, but the book that I thought about when I listened to Wildest Dreams is Twisted Games by Anna Huang. Now this is the second book in the Twisted series. You don't have to read them in order. They are companion books, but I would recommend doing so. This is about a princess and bodyguard romance forbidden romance, and in Wildest Dreams it's kind of like no one has to know what we do. His hands are in my hair, his clothes are in my room. So it's kind of a little secretive, you know, they're each other's wildest dream, and this one was really enjoyable. I love this book. Next up is the album Reputation. I am not going to lie, this is the album that I probably go to the least. Not that I don't like it, I love all of her albums, but it is one that I just listen to less frequently, but I do have some favorite songs on there, one of them being King of My Heart. The book that I chose for King of My Heart is The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. The opening lines to this song is like, I've moved in by myself, I'm better on my own, kind of a thing, and that's how this book starts out. Our main character is like, I don't want anything to do with love, I am just going to work on myself, be in my 20s, and she is kind of in need of an apartment that isn't crumbling around her like her current one is. So she finds this ad that says that I will share an apartment with you. The person who lives at the apartment works night shifts, she works day shifts, so she will sleep at the apartment, he won't be there, and then when she gets up to work, he will come home from work and sleep there. And it's a really cute story about they're kind of leaving notes for one another to find. Quickly develops into a little bit of a romance, and so I think that King of My Heart kind of symbolizes like that feeling of just wanting to be independent but then kind of stumbling into love, and that's exactly what this book is. Next song that I chose is Don't Blame Me, which is my favorite song off of this album. This recommendation might be a little bit of a reach, but I think it suits it really well. The lyrics, Don't blame me, love made me crazy, is the whole reason that I chose this book. The Eden Test, this is a thriller. It is one of my favorite thrillers of all time. It is about a girl who signs her and her husband up for a 7-day marriage retreat. They're secluded in a log cabin, and every single day there is an envelope that gets delivered to their door that has a question in it, and they're supposed to ask each other the question and kind of reflect on it, and each day the question gets heavier. It's kind of like tests their marriage, tests their love for one another. But little does her husband know that this isn't really like a real retreat thing. She's kind of manipulating the questions to see just how much he loves her and what he would do for her if he would die for her. He doesn't know that she's kind of putting her own twist on this retreat. She doesn't know that he has been having an affair for a very long time. So these characters are kind of crazy. Love's kind of made them crazy, and when I think of those lines, I think of this book. Next up, we have got the album Lover. This is also one that whenever I listen to it, I just think of like fun, summery, beautiful romances, and one of the songs that I chose is Daylight, and the book that I chose is The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. The lyrics that really made me get drawn to choosing this book is the I once believed love would be black and white, but it's golden. At the beginning of the story, you find out that our main character has recently lost her mom, and then the same night of her funeral, her co-worker, who is also her boyfriend, ends up dumping her. So she does not have a good perception on what pure love is. It's kind of tainted, but then when she becomes a bodyguard for this famous actor, love might start looking more golden to her. This one was a really fun read. I read this one literally in 2 sittings. I've never read Catherine Center before. It is closed-door romance, which I absolutely loved about it. It focused a lot more on the emotional connection between these characters instead of the physical connection. I just think that this book really encapsulates that line of the song a lot, and they both end up kind of finding out that love is in fact golden and not burning red or black and white, like also what Taylor Swift found out as well. Next up, we have the song False God on Lover. This is one that I run to quite frequently. It is, I think, my favorite on the Lover album. It is False God. And the book that I chose is Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. False God kind of gives me a little bit of like forbidden, hidden romance as well. This book is about 2 characters, Julian and Dahlia. They kind of had a thing for a while, but they both went their own ways. They've tried to move on, but they know that no one knows them better than each other, and so so they kind of spark up a romance, hoping that it is just kind of like a hookup thing. But of course that never ends well, and when I think of False God, it's kind of like they know what they're doing is wrong, but they're gonna do it anyway, but maybe it's gonna turn out right at the end. So this is the book that I think about for False God. We are now coming to a bit of her more recent albums. This one was released during COVID in 2020. It is Folklore. It is an album that I love very deeply. It has one of my favorite songs on it called Peace. And I think that people have different perceptions of this song. Obviously, like, music is kind of subjective to each person that listens to it. Everyone's going to have a different takeaway from a different song. And my takeaway from Peace is that it's kind of, the narrator is kind of talking to their lover and worried that they'll never be able to give their lover the love they deserve or the amount of love they deserve. And the book that made me think of that is Flawless by Elsie Silver. We go back and forth between the perspectives of the guy main character, Rhett, who is a bull rider, and then our female main character, Summer, who is kind of his nanny bodyguard, but not really. She's just supposed to be there to like supervise him, to keep him out of the bad light of media. He's a very famous bull rider, and he's gotten into some bar brawls and has said some things that he shouldn't be saying and is kind of ruining his reputation. So his agent has sent the agent's daughter to kind of be his supervisor for the rest of the term of his career. And Rhett is immediately captivated by Summer as soon as she comes in, and same for Summer. She's immediately captivated by Rhett, but Rhett is like, I have had such a dark past when it comes to relationships, and he has pretty low self-esteem and self-love kind of a thing, that he doesn't feel like he could ever give Summer the love that she deserves, and you'll have to read it to find out if he does. But that book just really made me think of Rhett and kind of his own internal struggles and internal monologues that we see in the story. The next song that I chose is Mirrorball. This song is highly praised by a lot of people that love Taylor Swift, me included. I absolutely love this song. Now, when I chose the book for this song, I was more so thinking about the character in particular in the story, our main character, instead of the theme of this book. The book that I chose is If We Were Villains. This is a dark academia theater thriller. It's about 7 students who go to a theater college, and they're in their 4th year there. They are performing plays the whole term of their final year in college, and one of them ends up dying. We are trying to figure out who the killer was, if it was one of the students, if it was one of the professors, kind of a thing. But my main focus in correlating Mirrorball to this book is the main character, Oliver. He also struggles with a lot of self-doubt and self-esteem, and is also kind of yearning for the eyes to be on him from one of his classmates in particular. That song just makes me think of him a lot. I don't want to say too much, but if you've read this book, you'll probably understand where I'm coming from. This recommendation is really more of a like microscope on the character than the book itself, but also the book is amazing regardless. I love this book so much. The ending is insane. I wish we would get a second one, but it's one of those books that the author kind of leaves the reader to decide what happens next. So it's really annoying, but it's really cool at the same time. We are now up to Evermore, which I would say is definitely in my top 3 albums that Taylor has ever created. There is a song in particular on this album that I probably play once every day or every other day. I don't know what is in this song, but it is just so like comforting to me, the way it sounds and the lyrics as well. I just love this song so much. That song is Cowboy Like Me. Now, I am grasping on to certain lines in particular from this song to recommend this book to you. My take on Cowboy Like Me is someone that has fallen in love with someone and they've lost them, and the lyrics "and I'm never gonna love again" are played in this song, and then the lyrics "forever is the sweetest con," which is such an amazing lyric to me. I could talk about that lyric for such a long time, about how like the promise of forever is such a sweet con, because it's not possible, it's just not going to happen. And it's such a heartbreaking song to me, at least from my perspective. perspective on it. And the book that it makes me think of is If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan. You may have read this. It's very popular in the book universe, but it's a book I will never stop talking about. It takes a lot for me to cry over a book, and this one and the second one, If Only I Had Told Her, had me bawling when I was reading it. It is a YA contemporary romance about two childhood friends named Finn and Autumn. They live right next door to each other. Both of their moms don't have spouses in the picture really, so their moms are like very close friendship, and they refer to each other's mom as their aunt. Autumn and Finn both have loved each other for the longest time, but they've never told each other. At the beginning of the book, you were told that something very tragic happens to Finn. You don't really know what it is, but you're told that in the very first chapter, and then it jumps to the course of them kind of being in high school and then being in very different friend groups. They don't really talk that much, but they will both tell you when you're in their perspectives that they used to be very close at a certain time, but I guess they just grew apart. But they have such a sweet, pure love for one another, but neither one of them will admit it to each other. You forget about the tragedy that happens at the end of the story, and you're rooting for these characters so hard, and then it happens and you can't do anything to stop it, and it is just so heartbreaking. But those lines, "I'm never gonna love again," and "forever is the sweetest con," I just think really encapsulates this book's story and this book's ending a lot. The second song that I chose from the album Evermore is Nobody No Crime. This also has a feature on it from the Haim sisters, and the lyrics that really got me to recommend this book to you guys is the lyrics, "I think he did it, but I just can't prove it." And the book I'm going to recommend is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. This is a thriller mystery with some dark academia tied into it. It is about a girl named Mariana. She is a group therapist, and she has a niece that goes to Cambridge University, and there has been a body of a girl found that is a student of this professor, Professor Fosca, and Mariana is like, "I know that he killed this girl, and how am I going to prove it?" So I think that those lyrics like really encapsulate it really well. She is dead set on this guy being the murderer, and you follow her journey of trying to not frame him, but like prove that he is the murderer. But so many things go on. There's so many twists and turns, and the ending is something I did not expect at all, but I think that this book is perfect for the song Nobody No Crime. Moving on to Taylor's second most recent release is Midnights. I enjoyed this album so much when it came out. It's not one that I go to as much anymore, but there's definitely a lot of songs on there I really like, one of them being Mastermind. I love that song so much. It's basically about how she saw someone and then she was like, "I'm gonna make him fall in love with me," and plotted this whole kind of thing. Now the book that I thought about when I listened to that song is We Do What We Do in the Dark by Michelle Hart. This is about a girl that has just started her freshman year of college. She's at the gym and she sees this sort of like a middle-aged lady. She's running on a treadmill and she's like, "I am going to make her fall in love with me." So there is a little bit of a professor-student affair that goes on, but the theme of that song and the premise of this story are literally like perfect together. So if you like those like plotting, mastermindy kind of love stories, definitely check this one out. The next song that I chose from the Midnights album is You're On Your Own Kid. The song You're On Your Own Kid is kind of like a dual-ended sword. I think that that's the saying, but it's kind of like the fear, "Oh my god, I'm on my own," but then also like, "Oh my god, like I'm on my own." It's like that freedom and that scaredness kind of that hits you as you grow up. So the book that made me think about that song is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors. Going into this book, I thought that the whole book was going to be based on a guy named Frank and a girl named Cleo. They are an age gap romance kind of thing. She is in her late 20s or early 20s, and he, I believe, is in his early 40s. And I thought that this whole book was going to be about their love story, but it's not. It is focused on a bunch of people in their life, including them, and everyone kind of has a downside to them, whether it's a sex addiction, a drug addiction, a shopping addiction, depression, infidelity. someone has some kind of like downside to them. I think what makes me think of the song You're on Your Own Kid is that even though they're in a relationship or they have people supporting them, you're still kind of on your own, and it's up to you in order to take the steps to make yourself better and to learn from your mistakes. And some people in the story do it and others don't. We have now reached Taylor's most recent release, The Tortured Poets Department, which is currently and may forever be my favorite album of hers. I had like a spiritual experience listening to this album. I feel like I was on a high from this album for the 48 hours post listening to it for the first time. It just captivated me in a way that music and her albums never have before, which is kind of crazy to say because they always captivate me, but I love every single song on this album. But there are two that stuck out to me for these book recommendations. The first one being The Alchemy. I love that song so much. I love that it's about Travis Kelce. Obviously that is kind of based around football. This book recommendation, The Art of Catching Feelings by Alicia Thompson, is based around baseball. I don't really have much to say about it besides there is just a love story going on based around a sport. I think that the whole theme of that song correlates to this book kind of. It was such a fun book. That song is such a fun song, so it makes sense. The last song and book that I wanted to talk about is the song LOML, which can either be Love of My Life or Loss of My Life, and the parallels between that and how she abbreviated it has so much meaning and depth behind it. And the book Wish You Were Here by Renee Carlino really encapsulates, I've been saying encapsulates this whole video, but that's just what is like running through my brain when I made the correlations between these songs and these books. But this is about a girl who is a waitress, and she stumbles into this guy named Adam on the street, and he is a painter. He was doing like street art outside. He also does a lot of paintings and stuff for like commercial work, but she stumbles into him. They end up having a one-night stand, and then the next morning they're both kind of like weird with each other, and like one runs out on the other. But then as the time goes on, they keep thinking about one another, and she eventually kind of moves on, but then still has Adam in the back of her mind. She ends up finding him, but when she does, he has been diagnosed with cancer. And so I will leave it at that. That is kind of the correlation between the love of my life, loss of my life. The lyrics really mesh. They really magnetize to the book and the song. I don't know. I love this book. I love that song. They are both so raw and authentic and heartbreaking. I think that there aren't that many like truly authentic love stories that you would find in this world that are in books, and so when I do find one that's very authentic and real, it just really gets me even more than like what a fairy tale kind of romance would be. So if you want your heart broken extremely, read this book. Alright, that is all of the recommendations I have for you guys. I had such a fun time like putting all of this together. These are all books that I absolutely love to death. If you have any Taylor Swift book recommendations that are based on some of your favorite songs, please let me know. I absolutely love watching videos like that, especially if I can find a book that is Swiftie coded. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, you know, all the little YouTube things, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!